chance to talk about the future, and I was reminded of something that Chuck Poulter said of that well-known agency in Colorado. And he was actually speaking at an IPA event. Someone asked him about the future, and he said, "Look, I'm old, I'm rich, I don't give a fuck about the future of advertising." I'd like to say those things, but as the head of the IPA, I can't. In fact, it's our job really to keep an eye and anticipate what's happening. And as a consequence of that, we spend quite a lot of our working days working with some of the most senior people in the advertising world, trying to figure out what is going to happen and what it means for our members. But the sheer fact of the matter is that we've undergone a revolution, a technological revolution. And what that means, I mean, many of you are at the leading edge. I mean, I think from what I can gather, a lot of you work in very digitally sort of savvy shops. So a lot of this won't be news to you. But to some of the big, what you might call pure play advertising agencies, many of them based in London, they've really had to sort themselves out over the last few years because they were really working to a model that wasn't suitable to today's market. And what that means is that we've got people in our agencies doing jobs that simply didn't exist 2 years ago. And we're even hiring talent to join the industry to do jobs that we haven't yet imagined. So it's all change. And indeed, some people have said that the technicians that we will be hiring, and we didn't used to really hire technicians, are in colleges right now learning stuff that will be outdated by the time they start work with us. So it's a lot to handle and a lot of things to think about. And one of the reasons that we are obsessed with this is that, and I don't know how many of you know this, that the UK is one of the most connected of all the major economies. In fact, I'm going to talk about Google in a moment. Anyone got any idea how much of Google's worldwide revenues come from the UK as a percentage of their total? It's 13%, which I think is just amazing. We're the second biggest market outside of the US. And in terms of, you know, if you like, per capita usage of Google, we're the highest. I won't go through all these facts, but the sheer fact of the matter is that pretty much everywhere you look, Britons are connected, and they use the internet and they use it for commerce, not just entertainment. Obviously 4G is on its way, that's going to speed things up as well. I'll come on and talk about devices and how we're using them in a moment, and I know some people have already mentioned this, but I've got some interesting stuff to show you on that. But one of the sort of optimistic things about all of this is that the advertising industry isn't just hiring these kids, but it's also trying to inspire people to get into the world that we need more technicians in. And I don't know how many of you know about Code Club. Code Club was started by a couple of girls who work in an advertising agency in London, an agency called Albion in Shoreditch. And they were sitting around talking one day about the fact that all the guys that can write code, and you may be some of those guys and girls in the room, more or less self-taught, and that the government were doing enough really to inspire young kids to get into learning this new language that's going to help our economy and also help them get on in the world. So these girls came up with the notion of Code Club, which would be an after-school thing that would go into primary schools. They would recruit from guys that could write code to teach young kids the rudiments and try and inspire them into learning how to code. And they made a little video to prompt recruitment, but obviously with one eye on creating a stir in the sort of PR sense. And they made this little video. They got some kids, some young primary school age kids, to interview some would-be teachers of code. And let's have a look at that. If you haven't seen it, it's quite sweet.
My name is Niklas Sandström.
So why would you like to work at Code Club?
I have made a few software, done something called Skype. I think I had well, I had a few others, but they were not as big. But
My name is Joanna Shields.
do you think you can do for Code Club?
I was chief executive of a company called Vivo.
Justin Bieber!
No, actually a company called Vivo.
Next. As you know, Code Club is an after-school activity aiming to teach children the basics of coding. What do you think you bring to the table?
Well, I'm Chad Hurley. I created YouTube.
Oh, I know. Did you do that one where the baby bites the other baby's finger?
No. Tim Berners-Lee. I invented the World Wide Web.
Anything else? Next. Prince Harry, to be honest with you, Mr. Windsor. So why would you like to work for Code Club?
I think it's a very useful skill, particularly for people like yourselves and young people. And I think it opens up huge opportunities in the future.
Like who?
My mother.
Your Highness!
So that, I think they're in something like 264 schools already. They've only been going a short time. And their aim is to get into 25% of primary schools by 2014. So it's an absolutely brilliant initiative. I mean, it's a bit of a shame that it has to be, as it were, created outside of any kind of government program, but maybe it will stimulate some action in that area. Now, I just mentioned Google, and one of the perks of my job, apart from being called Director General, is you get invited everywhere. And the week before last, I was taken to Google by the Google guys in the UK, along with some of the media heads of some of the biggest agencies in the UK. Really so they could tell us what they were thinking. I mean, it was a propaganda trip, really, but of course, we got to see some of the things that they're working on, and also meet some of their very senior people. And it was an absolutely terrific trip. I think we were surprised at how senior some of the people that spoke to us were. The actual, I suppose the most senior guy was the financial director of the whole thing, who's also their HR director. He said some interesting things. And their head of search is a lady called Susan Wozniacki, got one of those kind of names you can't pronounce. She was at University at Stanford with Larry Page and Sergey Brin and one of their schoolmates or college mates. And in fact, like all these tech companies starting a garage, it was her garage that they started the thing in. So she's pretty senior. She's a billionaire, comes to work every morning, stays till 5:30, works hard, like they all do. It's an incredible place. But just to sum up some of the things that we left with, and I'm going to talk about some of the more sort of fantastical things that are coming along the line. These are some of the sound bites, if you like, that you hear a lot down at Google at the moment. The first is that we're in a four-screen world, and they're under no illusion that this is going to be the case for some time. We'll talk about converging media and everything, but essentially we're talking about television still, PCs, mobiles, and tablets. They're the four things. They're obsessed with mobile, by which they mean both tablets and smartphones. And they're obsessed with what they call the four leaks, because they're all about proving that search leads to purchase and action. And the four leaks are that they're agonizing over are in-store leaks. So what they know people are doing is they're using their mobile to search and compare products and then purchasing them, but they can't track that. They're losing people across device, so they know they're using one device and then going on to another and then maybe logging onto the website. They're losing people where they are searching, doing all their homework, and then making a phone call and making a purchase. And the last one is just suboptimal websites where people have searched and gone onto the websites, but then they don't buy anything because they can't get through, they can't make the purchase. And these are the things that they talk about a lot. And the last point is that they talk a lot about TV, which is very interesting. One of the things I took away was how much respect they've got for television. And you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, TV's dead as we know it," and all the rest of it. And it will certainly change. But the TV, in the eyes of some of these people, I'm telling you, they are smart. I don't think there's anyone who works there that hasn't got a postgraduate something in something. And they're sort of hoovering up all the brightest kids from Stanford all the time. They're pretty certain TV is going to remain central to everybody's lives. But that really answers this question. It's not all about new media. And I found this clip of Eric Schmidt, who until very recently was the chief exec of Google, talking about how they discovered the power of television. So let's see if we can get that up.
So what happens is we're sitting in a staff meeting, and Lorraine, who runs all the marketing, comes over and says, "We need to show you this because we're going to show it to the board." And I go, "What?" And they show a Super Bowl ad. And I go, "Hell has frozen over." Because in the decade I've been at the company, we would never have thought that there was value in it. And I thought, somebody must have had a screw loose or something. And, so how did this all occur? Of course, it was your fault. And so we actually showed this to the board, and they liked it. I said, "Oh my God." And what was interesting about it was the narrative was actually much more interesting, because what happened, of course, which is a little bit of phrase for you, is that we allowed the market to choose the ad. That the ads that we had to choose from had been produced by your shop, and we looked at the ones that were the most popular. A very interesting insight, that you could put your ads on YouTube, and people could you could see which ones worked. I have no ability to figure out which ad is going to work better than the other, and it's obvious by my earlier comments. But I think even the creative people don't necessarily know which of the three that they like are going to be most popular, so the internet could be used as a boost. You did, okay. Well, you still use the internet to confirm your bias. So in any case, when we showed this ad, everybody said this was fine, and Larry and Sergey, after some discussion, decided to do this. We then measured the ad. And the question was, we paid a whole bunch of money to CBS at the time to advertise. The question was it a good business investment? And so because we have the ability to measure search traffic, we actually looked at the incremental search traffic that we got from a particular Parisian ad, and it paid for itself. Isn't that shocking? That at the end of the day, we took something which was a Super Bowl ad, and we turned it into an ROI phenomenon.
So that, to me, as an ad man, is quite reassuring. It's also quite an eye-opener in terms of how they work at Google, because they've never run a TV ad before. They produced this, it's the Parisian love letter, you've probably all seen it. They produced this ad in-house with some advertising people that they drafted in from agencies. And they showed it to Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and they didn't only say they liked it, they said, put it in the Super Bowl. So the very first thing they did was to run a Super Bowl ad at God knows how many millions. And as Eric's saying there, it went on to work. And as a result of that, which only happened, I think, a couple of years ago, they're now one of the heaviest users of television advertising in the States. And they do great work, and it's brilliantly on brand. And I've just got one of their more recent ones here, which you might have seen, which is all about collaboration. So we'll just play that. So they're pretty good at it as well, is what I'm saying.
Oh, here she comes. She's a scary lady. She's an angry tiger. She's a man gobbler. Eater. She's a man eater. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes.
So, as we've all discussed during the course of the day, the other thing that's going on, and we had a brilliant presentation earlier from Tiffany and, sorry, I've forgotten, Gemma, on how social media interacts with television. But I wanted to share something with you about how people's minds are dealing with this. And in a world where brands are experienced across multiple screens and touch points, a lot of people have surmised that there'll be a fall-off in terms of what they can take on board from the television advertising, because they're all on these other devices. So I've been talking to ThinkBox, who do a lot of research into television, how it works in television advertising. and they've let me see some of the videos that people agreed to have cameras in their homes to record of what they do when they're watching TV. So I'm going to show you an edited highlight, then I'm going to tell you about what the research showed afterwards. They call it meerkatting. You'll see why. They've sort of speeded it up. So, I suppose it's not really surprising, except that the number, what is quite interesting is the number of times people keep flicking up. So obviously the TVs are up there so you can see what they're looking at. But the really interesting findings were that they also, whilst they were doing this, had a match sample of people who were just watching television and not working with other devices in their homes. And they checked on the communication of the two groups. So the one group A, playing with their devices, watching TV. Group B, just watching TV. Same TV programs, same ads. No difference in what people heard, saw, remembered from the advertising. And this is partly to do with some of the things I think Alistair was hinting at earlier about the way the brain works, which, neuroscience is kind of moving ahead all the time. Now, a guy who is a researcher and a former academic and a neuroscientist pointed me at this video. You might have seen it; it's been on TV. But this sort of explains what our brains are capable of. I'll just play it. It explains, the voiceover explains it anyway. It's quite good fun if you haven't seen it.
Ba, ba, ba.
Have a look at this. What do you hear?
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba.
But look what happens when we change the picture.
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba.
And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Ba, ba. Ba,
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect.
ba,
Take another look.
ba,
Concentrate first on the right of the screen.
ba,
Now to the left of the screen.
ba,
The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
ba.
So that just blew my mind when I saw that. But I mean, what's actually going on there is that the implicit mind interprets what we see and then modifies the experience we have to fit. And I think that what this is pointing us towards is that the sort of models that we all have to measure and try and understand the communication of the advertising messages that we put out on whatever medium need to be really rethought, because I know for a fact that some agencies are still using the old attention, interest, desire, action model, the linear way of thinking about the way communication works. And certainly a lot of research companies do that. They simply say, well, we've checked what people remembered and they remember this, therefore you haven't communicated that. Not true. People have taken stuff on they don't know they've taken on, and then they act upon it later. Sort of touches on some of the things we heard earlier about, are you straying into the wrong areas sometimes here? But I think we need to understand it, and we need to adapt some of the ways that we work as a result. Going into the future, particularly as the lines between content and advertising become blurred. And I was looking around for an example of content and advertising becoming blurred, and I found an ad, a Belgian ad. You might have seen it. It's for the launch of a new television channel in Belgium, and it is a brilliant example of these two becoming blurred. It's on the internet. You can use it in any presentation you've got. It always goes in well. Meanwhile, back at Google, I said I just wanted to touch on a couple of the more futuristic things. Apparently, we were told this story, which I think, as far as I know, is absolutely true. The executive board of Google was sitting around bemoaning the speed of broadband in the USA, which is surprisingly poor. I mean, we moan about what we've got here, but in the sort of world league table of broadband speeds, we're just about in the top third. The USA at the bottom of the second third of countries. So they were way behind. And it's a known fact that it now will help drive your economic performance as a nation, speeding up broadband. But for Google, it's a really big deal. And a lot of their products are dependent upon good broadband speed, particularly Google TV, which they're setting a lot of store by. So apparently, they're having this meeting, and Sergey Brin just says everyone should have a gigabyte, which I've been told is more or less the speed of the cloud. So if you have a gigabyte at home, everything is instant. You don't wait for anything. And everyone said, well, yeah, that'd be great, but what can we do about it? So he and Larry kick it around and say, well, we'll do it. It can be done. So they get some rocket scientists in from NASA, and they work out how to deliver a gigabyte into American homes. And it still involves copper wire, digging up streets, doing a whole range of things that Google don't normally do. So they get this team together and they build a business model whereby they go into neighbourhoods, which they call fibrehoods, and they knock on the door and they say, hello, I'm from Google, would you like our broadband? And the house owner says, well, I already got broadband. Well, what have you got? I've got an AT&T package. What does it deliver? And they look on the form, 5 megabytes. And, okay, how much you pay for that? $40 right. A month, yeah. Well, that's our tier 3 product. Okay, what does that mean? Well, you can have that for free. We'll give you what you've got for nothing. Okay, what else you got? Well, for $70, you can have a gigabyte, and they explain that. And for $100, you can have a gigabyte and Google TV, which is basically everything on the internet into your TV, instant, no sort of buffering or anything. Are you interested? I'm very interested, right, good. The only thing is, and this is the best part of this model, you've got to persuade we need to persuade 25% of the homes in this neighbourhood, which they call a fibrhood, to say yes, they want it, and then we'll do it. So they've chosen Kansas City as their they asked all of the American cities who wanted to do this. Everyone said, please do it, please come and do it. So they chose Kansas because it's kind of in the middle. And they've not found a neighbourhood yet that hasn't raised 25% of homes, even in the poorest neighbourhoods, that say they want this new format broadband. And they're busily plumbing it in at the moment, digging up streets. Now, they don't think they want to go into this business big time. They don't think they want to go across America doing it. But it's an insight again into the way their minds think. They're saying that AT&T and the others are making disgusting profits from poor products. And they need someone to frighten them into action, to improve and show them how it can be done. So that, I thought, was a brilliant story. And the last one was we got to play with Project Glass. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. This is one of my mates who was on the trip with me. He's actually experiencing it at the moment. And basically, you wear these spectacles without lenses, and that little white thing there has got all the computing power of an iPhone. And you see, when you look up, you see a screen that is perfectly readable, a bit like looking in the rearview mirror of a car. You're still aware of what's in front of you, but you concentrate on the screen momentarily. And it's voice activated and delivers everything you want. You can ask it for things, you can ask it what the weather's like, you can receive your emails, it bleeps, you just touch it. It's amazing, and they are launching it after Christmas. It's going to be extremely expensive, and I think they're only targeting, geeks and ludicrously rich people. But they're going to roll it out over time, and it will become more affordable. But it's an example of, I think it's an example of the future. It's solving a problem that nobody else has spotted, which is that, we all love our smartphones, but there's a what's all this? What do you have to do all this for? You know, stop what you're doing. If you could avoid that, if you could just do it on the hoof, it would be even better. So I've got I don't know if I'll play all of it. It lasts for a couple of minutes, but I've got their sort of video they did just to explain this.
Maybe in front of Strand Books at 2. Oh man, really? Hey there, guys. Hey there, little guy. Sweet. Remind me to buy tickets for Monsieur Gano tonight.
So you get the idea. I mean, it's amazing. And I've tried them on, and it actually works, which is even more amazing. So I think, you know, there's a glimpse of the future, but I think the thing that I read most recently that sums up how we should prepare ourselves for the future is this quote from Bill Gates. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. And I think that's a brilliant summation of what if you think back to 10 years ago, how much things have changed. And yet, if you think back 2 years ago, did things change that much? I'm not sure. So there you are. As far as I'm able to see into the future, that's what I'm making of it. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.